Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode number 12 of the Pan Future Society podcast. I checked with management this morning. I am still Sean, and I'm still your host. It is Saturday, August 6th, 2016. I recently reread Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot, as I would highly recommend the book in and of itself if you're interested in science and space and the wonderful things we've already been able to do and the things that we might be able to do in the future. But when I got to the end of the book, I glanced over the brief biography on Sagan at the end, and it reminded me that a lot of these great science communicators that we've come to know, we don't always remember the science that they've actually done. So a little piece of that biography from the end of Pale Blue Dot. Carl Sagan was the David Duncan Professor of Astronomy and Space Sciences and Director of the Laboratory for Planetary Studies at Cornell University. He played a leading role in the American space program since its inception. He was a consultant and advisor to NASA since the 1950s, briefed the Apollo astronauts before their flights to the moon, and was an experimenter on the Mariner, Viking, Voyager, and Galileo expeditions to the planets. He helped solve the mysteries of the high temperature of Venus, answer massive greenhouse effect, the seasonal changes on Mars, answer wind-blown dust, and the reddish haze of Titan. Answer to that one was complex organic molecules. So, in a very brief nutshell, don't forget, Carl Sagan, not only was he a great communicator, but he was a great scientist. So if you're a fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye or Michio Kaku, among the current crop of well-known science communicators, dig into their biographies a little bit and get to know the work that they've actually done as well. And now time for the news of the moment. This week's news is not strikingly fresh, but worth talking about in context of the space colonization stories I've been doing for the past few weeks. I found an article recently, written a few years ago, but I just found it. Artificial wombs are coming, but the controversy is already here. This article by Zoltan Istvan on the Motherboard website. Zoltan Istvan is a futurist philosopher, journalist, and author. His best-selling novel, The Transhumanist Wager. He says, of all the transhumanist technologies coming in the near future, one stands out that both fascinates and perplexes people. It's called ectogenesis, raising a fetus outside the human body in an artificial womb. This is stuff of science fiction until fairly recently. Some scientists have been doing some work focusing on ways to save premature babies. In Japan, there are doctors and scientists working in some technology there. They gestated goat embryos in a machine that holds amniotic fluid. And another scientist, Dr. Helen Hongqi Liu, director of the Reproductive Endocrine Laboratory at the Center for Reproductive Medicine and Infertility at Cornell University. That was a mouthful. In 2003, she and her team grew a mouse embryo almost to full term by adding engineered endometrium tissue to a bioengineered extrauterine scaffold. More recently, she grew a human embryo for 10 days in an artificial womb. It was terminated before that because there's legislation that imposes a 14-day limit on research projects like that. Now, this, I think a lot of people would feel a bit squeamish or uncomfortable with the idea of ectogenesis. It's featured in the novel Brave New World, which it's not exactly in a positive light there. But aside from helping premature babies, working on other medical issues, another possible benefit of this is to further free women from being the ones to bear the largest burden for childbirth. Um, it's coming up in our political cycle again that women get paid less than men. Sometimes it seems like they are punished if they take time off to care for children. Well, what if they don't have to take that time off, at least for that phase of childbearing, carrying the child for 9 months? It could also protect children's development in an area where there maybe is there lead in the water, or what else is in the news? The Zika virus. What if you could make sure that the effects of the external environment don't have a detrimental impact on the fetus? So I think it's very interesting. I think the technology is probably eventually going to get there. People are working on it now. So I guess if you feel really uncomfortable with it, you probably don't want to use it for your own family planning needs. All right, that was your news of the moment. All right, on this week's extended story, continuing with the theme of space colonies and generation ships from the last couple of episodes, a few other options, possible future technologies that could be applied to generation ships and deep space exploration. While generation ships can be a solution for the long timescales required for travel to another solar system, there are a few other ways a colony may be sent into deep space that can avoid some of the challenges of a generation ship, such as food and energy consumption and social unrest. One such method is cryosleep or suspended animation. Once entirely the realm of science fiction, there are today several hints that long-term suspended animation may be possible. By reducing the body's temperature to a level far below normal, it's possible to slow down the body's natural processes. There have been experiments involving dogs and pigs in which the animal's blood was partially or entirely drained, replaced with a low-temperature solution, and they were later revived. Other methods of thermal reduction are used in heart surgeries, and we've occasionally heard stories of people falling through ice and being revived after a much longer time than a drowning victim in warmer water could have survived. In the case of the dogs, little brain damage was reported, and the pig experiment was reported as 90% successful. However, long-term cold methods would need to overcome the hurdle of ice forming over time. Such ice formation within cells would destroy them and render this method of suspended animation rather unusable. Some sort of future technology will have to be developed to pursue this as a long-term solution. Other research is making headway into using chemicals like hydrogen sulfide to induce a state of hibernation. There has also been some promising work done with mice using this method, and there has been research into other animal species, such as frogs and fish, who survive very cold water or even being frozen in water during the winter. Some of these animals produce a type of natural antifreeze that prevents ice formation within their bodies. Some form of cryosleep may help with shorter trips where astronauts may simply get bored by monotony, but I'm not sure how likely we'll be able to freeze someone for 1,000 years. In the race of technological growth, I think generation ships populated by large numbers of people win over suspended animation. However, another option that may indeed be ready before the large ships are is genetic manipulation. In Arthur C. Clarke's novel, The Songs of Distant Earth, ships are sent out to colonize new worlds. These ships hold frozen embryos of people, and after the ship arrives at the new colony site, the first generation of humans is raised by robots. And hearkening back to the artificial womb that I talked about at the top of the show. A similar scenario is depicted in the film Interstellar, where one of the plans to help humanity survive is to carry embryos to another planet and start over. A serious advantage of doing something like this is that you can get a lot more people in a small vessel. There is no need to build a 10-mile-long O'Neill cylinder. Storing the embryos, or should our ability to work with DNA be advanced enough, just having DNA samples, you could also preserve plants and animals for farming or for saving endangered species using this method. Another way genetic manipulation could assist future space colonies is in genetic diversity and medical treatments. I can imagine it will one day be possible to treat any radiation-induced ills with a DNA-based treatment, and with right manipulation, I would think you could reduce the minimum viable population size, thus also being able to build a smaller ship for travel. Such a minute and exact level of manipulation may seem as fictional as a warp drive, but with the emergence of CRISPR technology, it really could be right around the corner. I expect I'll be doing a full show on CRISPR in the near future, but in brief, it is a method of editing genes directly and precisely in ways that we have never been able to do before. CRISPR, CRISPR, stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. In short, it allows the direct deletion of genes, insertion of new genes, or altering the expression of genes within a strand of DNA. There has previously been some ways of altering genes or providing gene therapy, but CRISPR allows much more precision. In a mouse experiment, muscular dystrophy was treated using DNA in muscle stem cells in the mice. It is not a be-all, end-all solution yet, but CRISPR is in its early development, and we don't know yet all the things that we might be able to do with it. It's akin to the first telescopes. Now we have a new tool to learn what we don't know. I think it's likely if we go from space station, like the International Space Station, to a space colony in 100 years or so, medical and gene technology will keep pace. In the book Pale Blue Dot, Carl Sagan speculates that within 200 years, we will have the technology of one kind or other to colonize space. Sagan and others have said before, as I say now, it is necessary. I think if we are the universe trying to understand itself, we must do everything we can to continue that duty. We are at a time in history where now we have the ability to destroy ourselves or to stretch our imaginations and ambitions into the cosmos. Someday, whether by comet impact, human folly, or the eventual end of our sun's tenure as host to a habitable world, Earth will no longer support life. To some, religion comforts them in eventual loss of loved ones, of themselves, even of the world as we know it. But I think it would be a failure of humankind to assume that help will come from somewhere else. It hasn't so far, and we are so close to the edge. Do we fall, or do we fly? All right, that is your show for this week. Thank you once again for joining me on the Pan Future Society podcast. Come visit us online at panfuture.org. Email me at sean@panfuture.org. Find us on Facebook and Twitter. If you would like to help out with the production of the show, there's donate buttons on the website, or drop me an email. If you would like to contribute something to the show, if you've got a cool futuristic job, I can interview you. If you just want to chat about something, or if you just want to record a brief segment on your phone and send it in, I could include it with the show here. You drop me an email and let me know what you're interested in doing. And again, as always, thank you, and I will talk to you again in the future.